dude. I need to get it together. They think they can do what we do, but do it better. Jive turkeys getting bread and getting cheddar. Don't get sandwiched by a real competitor. Let them up, I'm getting better. No time to be fed up. Go get us for false profits. Get stoned like Rosetta. I'm just getting started, sorry I can't let up. And even if I could, I wouldn't, cause it's a setup for the next line. Wait in line for the next time. My intellect's fine, what I find is nothing's really mine.
I'ma do whatever it takes to get better. I'ma do whatever it takes to get better. I'ma do whatever it takes to get better. I am better. I am whatever.
All right, people, welcome back to the Starting Over podcast. This is part 2 of sort of our post-Gencon wrap-up. And with me, I have Patricia Lam with me. And so say hello to the nice people.
Hey, everyone.
We're doing this on TeamSpeak. So you might notice that the sound levels are completely different. And she sounds like a human and not a robot. Unlike some of my previous guests. The wonders of technology, and it's not always convenient to get everyone on TeamSpeak, but she's in Canada and I am in the United States, and there's no magical international transfer number I can use that won't cost me an arm and a leg. So, with that being said, I will admit, out of all the games that I watched out of Gen Con, your game versus Alex was one of the most entertaining games that I watched. Probably it's number 2, right next to George versus the Superman and 2 Johnny Quicks. That was just hilarious. But tactically, watching your game was number 2, and then the final round was number 3. You present a lot of strong meta elements in your team, and so let's start off. How did you come into the process of using Eradicator, Full Gauntlet, with Doctor Strange, with Scarlet Witch? So what was your mindset when dealing with that and creating that team?
Well, I guess the whole idea was I wanted to build a team around Eradicator just because he had the shape change, he has the super senses to start. So right off the bat, you have 2 rolls to avoid getting hit. So he was a good character to start building around. He also has a Superman TA, so you don't get your hindering terrain bonus. So when you always miss by 1, it's not going to be because of hindering terrain. And he has that 11 move, 11 attack, and high defense. So putting him with the gauntlet was mainly what I was trying to do. And then so I needed to fill in the points with support piece. Of course, that Scarlet Witch, for 50 points with Prop and Perplex, is a steal, so I had to put her on. And with the leftover points, I just did a search. And I figured, I could fill Doctor Strange in, get my defense up to 21 in hindering terrain, and maybe no one could hit me. That's the whole idea of having a team from range with a high defense, and relying on people not able to hit you, because you have those 2 roll-offs, and you have the high defense.
Yeah, and the one thing that it was astounding to me, because I said to myself, I was like, I thought Eradicator was going to show up more, just for how strong Eradicator was. And then not only that, I knew that Doctor Strange was going to be high-level meta. It was the question of what were you going to put with Doctor Strange was my bigger concern. So you sort of solve for both of those. And then I would also say, like, Scarlet Witch is like the automatic given for
I know,
Gen
she's
Con.
like the best prop that we have right now.
Yeah, until John Constantine comes around. John Constantine, I know I interviewed Howard Brock for Dragon Con, and for people go back and look at that show if you plan to go. But Constantine, if New 52 is legal, Constantine wrecks most of the meta now and makes Scarlet Witch a little bit more risky, just for the fact that you can't use prop. It makes you have to bring Outwit back to the game again. So I think we're going to start seeing people question that Scarlet Witch meta of it being the best. But I still think it's hecka good. It's super strong.
It's the strongest piece that I had going for Gen Con, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's so strong. I just did an eBay check. The Chaos War set sold out Fast Forces sold out. The Fast Forces right now, the lowest bid I saw was like $22, and people are selling Scarlet Witches for $35.
Oh wow. Yeah, because I know I was hoarding sets too. I have 2 Scarlet Witches so far.
Yeah, I have 1, and I want 2, and I know having 2 would like put me into that. Oh, okay, you can do a whole lot of different options. I feel sort of, as a high-level tactical player, I did feel sort of dirty, and I barely got the 1 Scarlet Witch I do have. But when I found out they were sold out and everywhere around me was sold out, that's when I sort of realized, like, okay, this is a lot more serious than what I thought it was. But anyway, going back to sort of your team formation design, before Eradicator and Scarlet Witch, leading up to Gen Con, before Chaos War came out, did you have like another team that you were thinking about, or were you just like, I'm going to wait until the last moment before I start testing?
It's usually the last moment before I start making something, because I want to see what's out there before I invest all the time in making a team. So Eradicator's been out for a while. I knew he was going to go with the Gauntlet, so it was really building around him that was what I needed to do before Gen Con.
Okay. And I personally have been looking at like Eradicator Full Gauntlet and Earth 1 Superman tech as being like this one of the contenders I thought that would be out there. I was wrong, needless to say. But it's the Eradicator by far is still just offensively and defensively a monster. And so up in your general area, in your Vancouver area, did you like test with your play group, or did you just say like, you played maps at home, or what was your process of refining your play of that team?
We have a pretty big community in Vancouver with lots of active players, and there's lots of good team builders and players out there. So the venue that I usually play at is one of the competitive venues in town. So we always have practice for Gen Con events, so build your best 300 point team, and we would all come and test to see what we can make from it. And then as a group, I could see what sort of things aren't working, what sort of things are working. And then I guess my HeroClix mentor, Rob, who's also from Canada, and he was in the top 16 with me as well. He taught me a lot about HeroClix when I first started the game, so it's usually him that I bounce off ideas and play test with. So it was mostly playtesting with him that I figured out how to make that Eradicator team work, because he's really good with strategy, and really due to him that I'm such a good player, probably.
And that's something I think it's sort of lacking in the game, and it's one of the main reasons I had the podcast, created the podcast, is that there's really not a lot of HeroClix mentorship or education. A lot of people will jump to say, blah, 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 cheese, blah, 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 unstoppable, blah, blah, blah. You should never play that because that's unbalanced. And instead of, putting out options and, developing people. So it's good to have people that help grow you in a discipline. So props on that. Did you have to play Rob during the tournament just by chance?
I actually had to play him twice. So the chances of that actually happening were so incredibly low, since we always go to Gen Con together. So this is the first year we've ever had to play each other, and then twice on top of that. So in the first round in the semi-finals in the Golden Age, we were paired together in the first round in the random matchups. And then, so I barely beat him in that game, and then we were both able to make it to the finals. And then in the first round of top 16, again, it was the random draw, and we were paired against each other again.
Oh, that's.
So I think we figured there was a 1 in 900 chance of that happening.
Oh, wow. Sometimes the odds aren't in your favor.
No. I actually said to him, I felt like this was the Hunger Games, because the odds were not in our favor, and only one of us was coming home a champion.
At least you didn't have to kill him.
That's true. To kill his figures, but not him.
That's like two shall enter, one shall leave. Oh man! So it also seems like the community that you had was supporting you a lot in and your playtesting and your development, and just you all sit around and talk shop about what's good in the meta and what's not, right?
So I guess, I guess what's the question here?
I'm just saying, it's like, do you have people like, at your local venue, do you all talk about like the top elements in the meta? Do you say like, oh yeah, this is coming out, this is going to change things, or is it just you all just play hardcore against each other? I
guess we all go out and play hardcore against each other, and then at the end, after all the dust settles, we see what's good and what's not good, and how to improve on each other's teams. And then after we play against each other, we see, oh, this character does better if you do this, or this character is good against this type of team. So as a group, after playing, we can figure out how to make the best team. And we also have an online forum where we can just spew out strategy and thoughts online, so we don't actually need to get together to figure things out.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So there's some invested effort overall. All right. All right, so let's sort of go back and look at that game in which you lost to Alex. And I looked at that game, and I straight up said in my mind, when I looked at the two teams, I was like, she has the best team I've seen out of all the listings. How did she lose? Like, initially when I saw how it broke down, I was like, how did she lose this? I was like, she had the best team I've seen. And it was a piece of art. And then when I saw the game, and I could say that critical moment was when he took out Doctor Strange. And he hit the Doctor Strange, and I think he hit it for 3. And then he hit Doctor Strange again. And the first thing that came into my mind was, did you see that you had prob? And I know it's a little bit negative coming off the top, but was there something else, or had you already used it? Because I might have just overlooked that point.
I don't know which headline to any prob, did she, or did I just miss that? Because I haven't actually rewatched my game because I didn't want to fall over all the things that I did wrong. Because I can probably watch it and be like, oh, I did this wrong, and I did this wrong, but I think that opening move might have been my downfall. I was banking on him not being able to hit.
Oh,
so he needed 7s and 8s to hit me, and I was banking on standing in the hindering terrain and waiting for him to attack me, and then I can attack him back. So I guess maybe I shouldn't have been so bold and ran up to him and maybe just positioned better. But I thought, so I actually put my Doctor Strange out front, but then I thought, oh, maybe I should have put my Scarlet Witch in front of him. Just because she has that slightly higher defense, and she has the prob, and she has the mystics. But then I thought, well, one shot and she's dead, and then I have no more prob, so that's why I made the decision of putting Doctor Strange in front of her instead. Really, which one did I want to lose first? So I think I'd rather keep the prob, which is why she stood in the back, and Doctor Strange took all the hits.
Okay. And the main thing, I sort of saw it on that map. It was equal advantage in my opinion for both teams. I saw when you had Doctor Strange up on the same line as Eradicator, were you banking on him attacking Eradicator, Alex attacking Eradicator, or were you banking on Alex attacking Strange?
I knew he wasn't going to go for Eradicator just because I had those 2 roll-offs, and I had a 21 defense from range.
Okay.
So I really wanted Eradicator there just to be in position to retaliate when I needed him to.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Heracles is a dice game, and luck is a huge factor, and his dice were hot, and my dice were hot. Like, for his gauntlet rolls, he got to the gauntlet faster than I did. That was another key factor, too.
Yeah.
And then both the attacks that I had on his Wasp, he rolled his super senses both of those times. So if I had managed to kill Wasp, it would have been a different sort of game, maybe.
Yeah. Wasp is the linchpin of that team, and it's a very distinctive linchpin. A lot of people didn't notice that until afterward. But I definitely would say, Wasp and then also Scarlet Witch were important elements. But then you add in the stat modification elements between the Gauntlet and the Perplexes and the hindering terrain, then it becomes a sort of a proverbial nightmare. I sort of progressing through that game, I noticed that, you had Scarlet Witch sort of in the back area, and then you just tried to, put in the full pressure with Eradicator. And unfortunately, it didn't pan out the way that you were wanting it to. What was going through your mind in those moments when you're dealing with all this pressure from Alex's team and you're down a piece?
I was more so thinking, darn, I wish I had that soul gem. Because if I had that soul gem, I would have killed Scarlet Witch, because I would take the Mystics and I would heal, so nothing bad would happen to Eradicator. But I would never land on the soul gem, which is why I had to go after Wasp.
Oh, okay. See, the thing is, we don't see the gauntlets at any point in time during the shot, and so we have no clue what's on what. So, and I think, unfortunately, some of the Monday morning quarterbacking that's going on online about Gencon and the games played mainly come from a little bit of lack of information, and mainly like what's the gauntlet on and what dial and what is showing. Because it wasn't until I tried following along with like my gauntlet and my card that I sort of realized, like, oh, they're on that click. It's like, oh, okay, he has this power. Because up until that point, you don't fully know what everyone's full options are. So, leading, just overall, and try not to, kick a dead horse that's, been beaten and also is, mildly rotting. If you took a step back in your design, where do you think, like, in that game, what was your pivotal moment where you could say, like, if I changed one thing, that would have been a completely different game?
Again, it probably would have been that opening instead of moving within range of Alex's whole team. Could have backed off a bit and let him use his +2 perplex to up his range instead of upping his attack. Because I had the running shot, and Wasp would need to running shot and get away from the rest of her team. If I had pulled back a bit instead of running straight at him, maybe it would have been different.
Okay, and that's a more than fair answer, and I have to give you a hand, because that's a lot of honesty in that answer right there. So just
also play a really great game, and he didn't make any mistakes that I could have capitalized on too. So
yeah, and that's one thing with high level play. It does sometimes just comes down to two elements. Either a bad play, one bad play can be a game changer. How many Gen Con games have we seen that happen? Like George's first championship, completely misstep by the Metron Thing team by trying to outwit turn one and not being able to minor movement, or you have a failure to hit just with the dice, and so all those elements combined can just make things just ridiculously difficult. Sort of moving on, you had a character that you wanted to make, and I am not familiar with that character. So if you could just give the people some background on that character.
Well, I put down Steve Trevor, and Steve Trevor is Wonder Woman's boyfriend, essentially. So really, she would have been just a support piece, not a actual attacking figure. Mm-hmm. So back in the day with classic Wonder Woman, he was in the army and they met. He was basically her boyfriend. I guess there's a new Steve Trevor in the new 52 series, but I actually haven't read the new DC 52, so I have no idea how different he is compared to original Steve Trevor from the 50s.
Ah, okay.
He would have been a fun piece just for me, not for anyone else.
Shoot, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. I think I read something with him. I saw him in like some Justice League thing, and he's pretty much like the handler for Wonder Woman. If that makes sense. Anyway, it's a little, New 52 is a little bit weird. Yeah, I have moments where I read New 52 and I'm like, oh yes, that's a great direction. And other times I'm like, what is this trite that I'm reading? But Red Lanterns is that for me. It's like, what is this trite that I'm reading? Oh, the human is special so he can make constructs out of blood goo. Like, oh, no. And that's the one thing I don't like about DC. And really, I don't like about comics in general sometimes. When they go galactic, humans are always special. And we always can do things that no other race in space has spent eons trying to do. We do it. And so it never made sense to me. The only time I feel that they got like the cosmic thing right was Nova Corps. Because Nova Corps was like, everybody is an average individual. We specifically seek average individuals to make that the embodiment of our force, so that people don't think like, oh, I'm exceptional, so I can go and do whatever. So it's a little bit more humbling, space police force.
Okay.
Anyway, so I sidetracked. So let's say I'm giving you this curveball hypothetical. If you were in the final round against George, do you think you could have taken on that Black Adam team and won?
I don't know, because George's style seemed to be get Black Adam up in your face, so you can't do much. Because he had that Monster Society ETA. So I think my strategy would have been to stay back from Black Adam so that I could Psychic Blast him. But he would just run up against me with Black Adam, I think, and force me to roll to break the running shot, or barrier myself in. So I don't know how that game would play out, because George, I've never actually played George before in all the times that we've been to Gen Con.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I did a little theory crafting of my own at home, and I started looking at the team, and I tried to play like George, which, as difficult as that is, for my thinking style. And it really came out to like a 60% chance in your favor when I played that team out, just because of if the barrier was back. But you also had your team not as spread out. And so when I tried to clump it together, then there were some problems. But like spread out, I was like, oh shoot, then yeah, there's problems with George. But together, it made him going from one target to the next a little too easy. But overall, I really want to ask you, since I have a chance to, what's your outlook on the meta? And this is something I can't ask you, since you are a high level, consistent placing player. The way Wiz Kids is taking the game, adding in the mechanics, tweaking certain powers, and like definitely adding in vehicles, and adding in split and merge. What is your take on the meta and where it's going?
It's a really tough question, because we don't know what the new things coming out are going to be. So whether vehicles are going to be efficient taxis, or whether they're going to be useless pieces, we don't really know. I guess everything's going to be building on the Gauntlet, or whenever the Gauntlet retires, maybe it'll be built on the Batman Utility Belt. So I guess right now you have to build with what you know and play with what we have right now. So everything going forward, I think, needs to be built on the Gauntlet, and who can use the Gauntlet most efficiently, and how to get that Gauntlet cranked so that you reach godhood before your opponent does. So I really don't try and worry too much about the meta, and just build strategically and efficiently. So I'm not going to sit home and worry about, oh, can my team beat Ventry? Can this team beat every other team? It just needs to be able to beat most teams, and move along with a little luck and hope you don't face that one team that you can't beat.
Yeah. And for the way I'm seeing the meta, definitely coming out of New 52, there's a lot less emphasis on here, let me crank up, modify your stats, more so of those mid-level pieces, those pieces in that 75 to 115 range. We're seeing more of those figures being filled out as decent figures. I wouldn't say they're necessarily on that icons level of play, but they're pretty solid. Definitely, like Madame Zandu is like my new favorite piece as soon as I'm able to get her out in like official play in a big game. I think we're seeing the transition into smaller points and more figures on a team versus I think we're coming out the age of the tent pole and we're going back into the swarm age again. The tent pole mechanic came out, swung hard, and kicked everybody's butt, and I think we're going back to 3-man, 4-man teams again. What do you think about that?
I actually like the swarm team. Tent pole isn't really my style. I like a well-rounded team. But I guess, I'm happy to see all these cheap, efficient pieces coming back. Back in the day when you had pouncing Spider-Mans, good, cheap, efficient pieces that you can use. And, if he dies, whatever, you still have 2 more on your team, and they dish out so much damage, whereas if your temple takes 1 hit, then you're done, usually most of the time. So I'm glad that they're building pieces like that now, and I guess with the new 10th anniversary, there's also that Catwoman, and she'll probably affect the meta because with her, you can't use resources. So people might be building a team to counter Catwoman or putting Catwoman on their team just to counter Gauntlet people. So, it's another rock, paper, scissors where you're like, okay, what do I do with this now since all these pieces are coming through?
Yeah. And, I want to ask you this because I'm at a mixed point right now because the way I see things, relics and resource dials are becoming mainstays. You have to have them. If you don't have them in some form or the other, then you run risk of losing the game or losing several games. Do you think, like definitely with what we've seen from the 10th anniversary stuff, do you think we can move to a meta where resource dials and relics are optional, or do you think that's like always going to be there with us?
Well, I guess it depends what else is out there when the next big tournament comes around, whether you can just put the gauntlet aside and bank on Catwoman interrupting the whole team. But I think right now with what I'm seeing with all the pieces that have been previewed, that you still need to play the gauntlet and to be able to kill Catwoman. And gauntlet.
Yeah, that or Iron Man. Iron Man, of all the figures that they've released for the Marvels and DC 10th anniversary, the one that most concerns me is Iron Man at, I think it's like 125 points, I think. I'm just spouting it off the top of my head. Let me go look it up. But for him to be able to say, guess what? I won't be taking your gauntlet damage. If you have a relic or a resource, I won't be taking damage from you, and I may take 1. But other than that, no. I'm just going to ignore you, and I'm going to kill the rest of your team. That to me just says that WizKids is saying, okay, resource dials have had their time in the sun. Time for us to, shut that down.
I guess they probably thought about, once they release this, what we're going to do, and if something's too powerful, how do we stop it? So I guess that was their theory on improving the game since, after Gencon there was a lot of talk on the forums about, gauntlet this, gauntlet that. All the teams in the top 16 had a gauntlet. So I guess it creates variety by forcing people not to play the gauntlet if you have characters like Iron Man or Catwoman out to get you. So,
yeah.
It's a good move.
Yeah.
create more variety since that seems to be what people want. They don't want to see the same things over and over. Like before, it was like every team had a Metron or a Nightcrawler or a Kidzoom. But
Yeah.
I guess I like the Gauntlet since it did create that extra bit of diversity in the top 16. You didn't see the exact same team over and over again. Sure, it was the Gauntlet on every team, but every team was built on a different principle.
Yeah. And the thing I'm looking at, and I was going to ask you about how you felt about the diversity issue, which you addressed really well. When we look at the diversity issue of pieces, I think someone pointed out like the top 16 had less diversity of support, but when it came to like major pieces, it was the most diversity that we've seen in several years. Definitely because of two major issues when new WizKids didn't adopt some of old WizKids mistakes, which is locked to one map, which was always so bad. That just made things so bad. And then also the other thing that reason we were able to see diversity was that the ability for your figure to be yanked by Nightcrawler wasn't there. And I think that was a big game changer because I don't see a team like Alex's team that was built being able to deal with, Nightcrawler with Guinness Veil, because that would be like the closest equivalent I could think of off the top of my head to Nightcrawler Metron. With Guinness Veil with a partial gauntlet and Nightcrawler. Something along those lines. Everyone would be playing that instead of all the other things we've seen. We definitely would not have seen an AIM team. I know that for a fact.
Yeah. Red Skull will be yanked out of there so quickly before he built his machine.
Yeah, it's like, build me a doomsday weapon. We finally got that wing up. Hold up, wait, why am I over here? And who's this man with these glowing hands? Yeah. But I was really taken back and last year, Superman set came out, and when it brought back the heavy hitters and it made Psychic Blast valuable again. Because before we were seeing just high damage, you didn't really need to have Psychic Blast. And then it when the Gauntlet came in, it sort of evolved into Running Shot, Pulse Wave, Running Shot, Psychic Blast. Do you think that there probably is going to, do you think there should be a reaction to the massive amounts of reliance on Running Shot, Psychic Blast, Running Shot, Pulse Wave, or do you think that it's fine as it is? That it doesn't need to have a counter, or it doesn't need to have something that can challenge that area of the meta?
I don't know what to say about that, actually. Because, yeah, the whole premise of using Eradicator was, he had that running shot, and he could running shot and Pulse Wave, which is why, I didn't choose a common Superman, because he starts with Hypersonic, and once you're on number 2 of your gauntlet, you're like, okay, now I have Hypersonic, and, I can't choose Hypersonic and Pulse Wave.
Yeah.
So, it was strategic T-building to pair the Eradicator with being able to running shot and Pulse Wave and get someone. But yeah, it is a race to the Pulse Wave too, and basically if you have 2 guys with Gauntlet, they just stand there and Pulse Wave each other. So, there's really no counter to who can get to the Gauntlet first and who can Pulse Wave first.
Okay. So yeah, I think unfortunately we have been, to an extent, painted into a corner with some of the reactions to defensive options that we've seen in the game, and definitely with combinations of powers that, and for those who have played, pre-Avengers, pre-Justice League, and I'm not talking about the new sets. I'm talking about when special powers were first introduced. You didn't really see, and just being honest, you never really saw like super senses and shape change. Like I never really saw that combination. I didn't really see, well, you definitely couldn't see Charge Flurry, but you didn't see certain defensive options paired together. You never saw Impervious and Shape Change together, and so now that we're seeing those things, the only direct response that I can think of is, of course I have to running shot pulse wave. But then in the back of my mind, I keep thinking, like, if we take away in the meta the ability for running shot and pulse wave to be effective, then does that make impervious super senses with shape change and energy shield deflection combination, does that make that completely unbalanced? Does the defensive options become so unbalanced that the game gets bogged down? And definitely with all the characters that give you, those options, like, it's not Hitman. What was that guy's name? He was in Superman set. He gives all your teammates shape change, and you combine that with, Doctor Strange. You have energy shield deflection and shape change.
Okay. No, I don't remember who that character is.
Oh gosh, he's like a bodyguard. Oh man. And the worst part is that I know he's a spy because I built a spy team with him.
Okay, no, I didn't even consider putting him on any team because I have no idea who this character is.
And then this is like, and Edward searches through the files to find the one figure that he mentioned so that he can properly reference it. Oh gosh, and of course he cannot find it in the expedient time. And I know what's going to happen too. It's like, I'm going to be done with this conversation, and it's like, I remember that guy. And yeah, of course, like, I can't find it. Anyway. Oh man. I'm going to cheat real quick. I'm going to type spy into AC Realms. And I'm going to go straight to Superman set. Okay.
One of the Legion guys?
No. Human Target.
Okay.
Yeah. I had like a pretty good team with him. And, it didn't work because it wasn't mobile enough. And then I had if I was going to Gencon team and it was two Sun Boys, the League of Assassin from the Batman Dark Knight Rises set with on the enhancement click, with two Scarlet Witches, which one I would have to borrow from someone, and no gauntlet at 300 points exactly. And then you just copy League of Assassins ATA and put up barrier. So it didn't matter what map you were on, you were going to pretty much not going to be shot, and you could advance at your leisure. So it was one of those, you have to be on your ball about your barrier placement, but it was really tough. It would be really tough just to get a shot on somebody. And then also looking at, there wasn't really that much outwit, so I really didn't have to be too concerned about that. But if they did have outwit, guess who's going to die first? That figure. Anyway, sorry, just going into the end of just wrapping everything up. Is there any figure that's come out, you see that's coming out like New 52, or it's going to come out with DC 10th anniversary, or Marvel 10th anniversary that you say to yourself, man, I got to make sure I watch that piece, or man, that's going to be a really strong figure in the meta?
Like you mentioned, the John Constantine, he's good since he drops all that prob. And I thought the new Enchantress from 52 pretty good too, both at the 250 and at the 50-point level, especially at the 50-point, because you have TK to start, and you have prob, and Mystics. And then
two targets. Two targets.
Yeah, and then she's also 50 points, so again, you have a 50-point character that is so good in terms of support. And then someone actually said Enchantress with full gauntlet would cause a lot of damage on her own too. Even though she's a boot figure, she still has that poison, and she has the impervious and shape change, and with the full gauntlet she has super senses, so she has 3 rollouts already on top of that. So she seems pretty unstoppable, yeah. In a 300-point game, but in the higher point game, if you're playing around town for fun, put the gauntlet and see what happens.
I'll have to try that, because I got some of my order, and then I looked and reviewed, and I was like, I do not have any Green Lanterns. So I went and got two, fortunately for like $1.50 each off of eBay. But yeah, she's pretty monstrous. Is there anything out like the DC sets, or the DC 10th anniversary or Marvel that sort of stands out to you?
I haven't been really looking that much at the previews. I like waiting until the whole set is out and then basking in all the hero clicks. I find it brings a surprise sometimes when you know what's coming in set, and once you buy it in the store, you're like, oh, okay, this figure I saw earlier, it's boring. So, it's still a surprise when you wait and don't look at the previews too much. When you finally crack open your boosters, you're like, oh wow, this figure's so cool, I wasn't expecting that. So, I really know what's coming on in 10th anniversary and what would be a key piece for later on. But looking forward to it coming out next month, I think.
Yeah, I hope so, because I need to, really, really hope that it's cheap. Like, I need to just go buy a box for $45 instead of trying to buy a full set. Oh, yeah. Anyway, all right. Thank you very much, Miss Patricia Lam, for being on the show.
Oh, thank you.
And, if you all want her to come back and on my lovely Friends TeamSpeak server, let me know. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy. Oh gosh, I can't help but saying that. Too much Bill O'Reilly from college. Too much. Anyway, still thinking of a show idea for HC Realms, and I'm thinking of calling it Barbecue and Cheese. If you have a better name, then let me know. Or else it might be Barbecue and Cheese by the time I roll it out. If you want Patricia to come back, hit me up. And most likely I will invite her back just because she has great insights on the game. That's it. Thank you for listening. And remember, we all have to start over sometime.